What is up, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters? Welcome back to Chalk Talk, presented to you by Deal With It Productions. I'm Preston Deal, and yes, you heard that right. I control everything in that statement because we all know that betting on yourself is the surefire way to make sure you give maximum effort and take no days off. A whole week of just posting shorts, coming off of an amazing combine, one of the best that I've seen in a long time. A lot of guys out there competing. I think it was an absolute success. The combine meets expectations of mine every year, but I think it pushed into this fan base experience even more than people realized. A lot of people showed up. A lot of people came to watch the quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers. But it's also good that there's a lot of guys that are being talked about who weren't being talked about prior to the combine. And that's what it was set up for. That's what it's designed for. It's designed where if you're a star already, you go and you prove that you are going to be that star that everybody expects you to be. If you're a nobody, you can become a star overnight at the combine. Your stock can rise. We've seen guys go from nobodies to first round picks in a matter of 2 months. We're closing in on the draft, which is huge, and we're coming up on free agency, which has already started to kick off this week. So that's why I'm excited to be back making a live show, back in front of the microphone, back in front of the camera. I've been itching to get this information out. I've been itching to talk about all the stuff that's been going on. It was a lot of work to get all those videos made, edited, all the notes, all of the content in between doing life and work and all this stuff. So appreciate everybody that liked, that commented, that subscribed, that supported, that reached out to me. It's all greatly appreciated. If we can keep up that energy, I will be eternally grateful for that. Today we are going over the news. We're talking news. We're going over things that have happened in the NFL the past week and kind of going over what we know, what we can expect, what we should expect to see, and my take on those things. We're going to talk specifically about receivers, a little bit about offensive linemen. I got to drizzle that in there. And then we're going to talk about the D-line class for the draft and then the implications that has on the D-line in the NFL and what we've seen all week from the D-line. Particularly the edge players. I think the edge players are obviously the staple of the D-line. It's become this glorified position. But we have some guys to highlight. Some guys have made some money. And there's been some shocks. So I will give my take on all that. I do want to say I am wearing a Bears jersey, Chicago Bears. Don't want to mess up the microphone. Shout out to them. 54, Brian Urlacher. If you're a Bears fan, this guy's an absolute legend. Wearing the Bears today, like I said, I'll wear a lot of different team gear, a lot of different sports across different sports. But the Bears are winning the offseason at a very fast rate yet again, like they do every single year. Every single year, Bears fans are like, this is the year because of 37 moves that we've made before free agency, another 30 that we're going to make in free agency. We're going to draft 15 guys. We're going to pay a bunch of people, and we're going to win the Super Bowl. That's the trajectory every offseason. This offseason feels a little bit different because, trust me, I grew up in a household of Bears fans, so I know how this goes. Ben Johnson, one of the most sought after head coaching candidates in a very long time. It seemed like every single vacancy of teams that needed a head coach was interviewing and wanted Johnson as their head coach. The Bears snag him. The first thing he does, he goes out and he secures the offensive line. You have to secure the offensive line. It's been a huge question mark in Chicago, and it was very evident this year that Caleb Williams was not comfortable in the pocket. You have to secure your offensive line. He goes out, gets a guy that he knows very well in Jonah Jackson, played left guard for him in Detroit, moves on to the Rams, played some tackle, didn't really work out. I think he's going to play right guard. I say that because, oh my God, if 20 to 25 NFL teams out there knew, I'm going to go ahead and say all 31 other than the Kansas City Chiefs, if they knew that Joe Thuney, perennial All-Pro, left guard, has played with two of the GOATs at quarterback, went from Tom Brady winning a boatload of Super Bowls to Patrick Mahomes winning Super Bowls. This guy is a Hall of Fame guard. Kicks out, plays tackle when they need it the most. Basically told Andy Reid, I'm your best player on offense. Put me where you need me. They trade him for a 4th-round pick to the Chicago Bears. Any team, all 31 NFL teams would have sent their 4th-round pick and maybe even more for this guy to play left guard, which might be, if not the 3rd most important position on the offense, it's definitely the 2nd most important position on the offensive line if you have a right-handed quarterback, which Caleb Williams is. Your left tackle, your left guard, they have to be in sync. They have to be in unison. Securing the guard positions, obviously they have a young right tackle and right, Darnell Wright, that they brought in, who's just going to continue to develop. You'll see him draft the center most likely in that 1st round, if not in the 1st round, in the first 2 rounds, if they don't go out and get another splash offensive lineman in free agency. Their left tackle is a little bit of a question mark. I still have a question mark there. There's a guy that's a free agent right now out of Baltimore, Ronnie Stanley. Massive offensive lineman, very technically sound, very good. He's athletic enough to block for the most athletically gifted quarterback that the NFL has probably ever seen in Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears throw some money at him. Securing that offensive line is huge. Ben Johnson knows from Detroit that the best offensive line creates an even better quarterback. And not too many people thought Jared Goff was a good quarterback. Get behind the top 5 offensive line, top offensive line, top 5 offensive line in the NFL, and you're automatically that much better at the quarterback position. So shout out to the Bears. They're making moves. They're not done yet. Their draft is going to be really good, we think. Again, sometimes you never know. There's always check marks next to teams where you know that they're going to draft really well. There's always question marks around teams that you think, they're drafting guys that have 6th-round grades in the 2nd round. The Bears are a question mark team when it comes to that, but this is a great start, and this should make Bears fans ecstatic for if not next season, for that foreseeable future that we always talk about. So that's why I'm wearing them. They're winning the offseason right now. I know they're pretty much the only team doing anything, but that was awesome. The Joe Thuney trade was wild. And Jonah Jackson, that trade equally is great for them. Also, little housekeeping type of deals. 2 weeks from this Sunday, so March 23rd, there is a special show that is going to take place that will be released Monday. So we're going to film, we're going to record on Sunday. It will be released on Monday like usual. Not going to give away the full details yet, but it's something different. It's something new. It's something I'm excited about. A little hint, it won't just be me in the video that you guys see on March 24th. So if you're watching this right now and you're curious about any changes, you're like, wow, this setup, it's always the same. It's the same things. March 23rd, we will be out on the road. We'll be filming, and it won't just be me. So that show on March 24th on that Monday is going to be epic. It's going to be something that is super awesome, and it's going to be something that I'm really excited about. Really different, really unique. Mark that date. If you have some ideas, I'll give some more tips and tricks and trades to that are coming up, and see if we can get that announced. It will be announced probably before. All right, I think we're back. Minor technical difficulties with the video and the setup, the production here. But like I was saying, the show is going on the road March 23rd. We'll be posting that March 24th, and it won't just be me. So little tidbits into what to expect. If you like what we're doing here, if you want to stay informed on these wild adventures or just any of these shows or topics that we have going on, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Helps us out, and we appreciate all the love and support that we are generating, that we are getting, and that we are giving back throughout this process. But let's talk about some news. Specifically, like I mentioned, the wide receivers and the D-line, the edge players are what we're going to harp on today. We talked about the Joe Thuney addition to the Chicago Bears, which was our little sprinkle on top for the offensive line. But the wide receiver group has kind of been up in the air, I would say. I think that's a good way to put it. Over the past couple seasons, there's been trade rumors, there's been receivers paid, there's been receivers not paid. We've seen franchise tags, we've seen trades. We saw Deebo Samuel get traded during the combine from the 49ers to the Commanders, which is setting up an interesting trajectory now for Brandon Ayuk, who again is in another year of controversy. And I think, at least the way that I see it, perspective that I had on the situation, I feel like he signed his deal because it was life-changing money and it was something that he wanted. But I don't think he's fully there or fully invested in the 49ers or their organization. It's a very unfortunate situation with his injury, but prior to the injury, he still wasn't playing like the Brandon Ayuk that they knew before that they paid. So moving on from Deebo Samuel, I think opens that door to now move on from Brandon Ayuk, who is going to be traded to somebody that has to take on his salary, take on him as a player, and take on all of that stuff, especially his rehab, and hope that he can be the player that he was before. Another interesting situation, and a lot of this is like duos. I'm starting to see a trend, and I'm sure everybody else is too, that the NFL in the receiver category is following a trend of duos either being brought in or moved on from. The Seattle Seahawks moved on from Tyler Lockett. He was released, they moved on, they parted ways, whatever terminology that they used and whatever makes people feel better about the situation. Tyler Lockett, to me, has been one of the sneaky, most steadily reliable, steadily good wide receivers that we've had in the league for a very long time. Whenever you mention, like, oh, well, what about Tyler Lockett? People always seem to say, well, I forgot about Tyler Lockett. Oh, yeah, he's great. I forgot to mention him. He elevated the Seahawks. He's a pro's pro. He's an absolute dog on the field. He looks like he's 45 years old, and he's making plays that are out of this world. He helped get that team to multiple Super Bowls. They won a Super Bowl. I think that he's probably done playing. He's left an impact. He's super humble, like, most unselfish player you can have on the team. If he does get signed, I would love to see him continue to play. I think he's got juice left. I just think he's the type of guy that would probably go out playing for one team on a high note of, that was my career, that's what I did, I'm going to go live my life. Probably will get into coaching. Seems like he has a personality that people rally around and everybody seems to love him. But it also triggered the duo conversation again of now DK Metcalf has requested a trade out of Seattle, which I want to say that I'm surprised, but in the same aspect, I'm not. With Deebo Samuel being traded, with the conversations heating up about receivers getting paid, DK has kind of looked like he doesn't fit with the new system, with the new regime. He kind of looks out of place. The general manager said that he's been talking to a lot of teams, or a ton of teams, or whatever the quote was from him. Metcalf's only 27. He's a freak athlete. I think he's in a much better position to generate higher value, higher return for the Seahawks in the trade market than Deebo was, a couple weeks ago. But they're asking a first and a third round pick, which seems to be kind of a lot, especially with DK Metcalf needs a new deal. Sure, he's a freaky athlete. He's a great deep threat. He's a fantastic wide receiver. He instantly makes any receiver room better. Arguably could go to any team in the NFL right now, be wide receiver number one, making plays all over the place. But a 1 and a 3, Deebo goes for a 5th, is kind of one of those, large asking prices. And yes, I understand you have to start really high and work your way around. I think probably a 3 or a 4 would probably get the deal done. What I'm thinking, though, is DK Metcalf has this unique ability to generate this attention. He's an attention grabber, on the field, the dark visor, the looks aside, his play elevates itself. Going to a team that is in a position to win, who could pay him potentially with doing some cap space gymnastics and has the value that they might not necessarily need in the draft capital to go and get him. Right now, it's looking like, to me, that the Buffalo Bills might make the most sense to go after a guy like DK Metcalf and pair him with the Josh Allen, with the production that the Bills offense had this whole season. The Bills have 2 second-round picks. Now, I'm not saying DK's worth the second-round pick, but if you have 2 picks in the second round, and if you're the Bills and you have been questioning whether you're going to take a receiver in the first, you're going to take maybe a receiver with one of those 2 picks in the second round. If you're considering taking a receiver at all, and you're picking lower in the second round, why wouldn't you entertain the idea of a DK Metcalf? Yes, he has to get a new deal. He has to get a contract. I think that there will be negotiation room for the deal that he's going to get for being on a team like the Bills that are, we would assume, going to make a run to the AFC Championship yet again and probably are on the fringe of going to a Super Bowl. I think he would be thrilled at that idea. I think the Seahawks would be more than happy to take a second round pick for him. And I think that this deal could probably get done relatively quickly if the Bills jump on it and proceed with that idea. So that's an interesting situation that the Seahawks, a guy, moves on or they release him. He's probably going to retire. And then you lose another wide receiver, 2 receivers gone from your 3-headed monster. You got Smith-Njigba that obviously has become their number 1 wide receiver. They're going to have to figure out that wide receiver position in Seattle. But I do think that DK's value is probably that 3rd or 4th round pick as far as his trade value. But I wouldn't be surprised that if the Bills go ahead and throw a 2nd round pick, if Seattle says, yeah, here you go. So the other duo that I have written down, the Ja'Marr Chase T. Higgins situation in Cincinnati is absolutely crazy. Yet again, Ja'Marr Chase is probably going to become the highest paid wide receiver, which puts a huge dent in paying anybody else that you need to pay. The cap space is a mess. They can't afford all their players. A guy on the other side of the ball in Hendrickson, we're going to talk about when we talk about the D-line, needs money. So whether whether you tag Higgins and trade him, whether you give him a deal that he's going to accept and handcuff your entire team, whether you give him a deal and trade him, whatever the plan is for this, it seems like we're talking about this every single year. And it seems like the more superstars you have on your team nowadays, with all this push to win the Super Bowl, year 1, all that pressure to go and win has kind of hindered what these general managers can do over time. They put all their eggs in one basket, and then their foreseeable future that we talk about kind of crumbles around them in a way that is a financial burden. So my belief about the Cincinnati wide receiver duo situation is that I think T. Higgins will be tagged. I think he'll be traded to a suitor that will probably wait to see what DK Metcalf gets as far as a value. I mean, if DK goes for a 3rd or a 4th, I'm assuming Cincinnati's valuing T. Higgins with a 2nd round pick, probably just a little higher value than DK. If DK goes for that 2nd to the Bills, a lot of teams are going to have a lot to pay for to go get T. Higgins. But I don't see the Bengals forking out a deal that makes him one of the higher paid receivers in the league, especially to be a number 2 receiver on a team with so many financial responsibilities. With that being said, I do think that they will pay Ja'Marr Chase and make him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, which at this point makes sense for what they're doing. They've said they wanted to do that. The deal is probably a lot closer to being done than we give credit for. A lot of the things that get pumped into the media are actually pumped by the side that wants the contract to be inflated or to be hindered in a negative way. Those aren't the true facts or the reality of what's going on, and I'm sure this deal has implications of getting done very soon. The other interesting, it's not a wide receiver duo, but it is a duo of offensive weapons. Christian Kirk gets traded to Houston, and Evan Ingram is released. the tight end from Jacksonville, receiver from Jacksonville. Christian Kirk kind of came onto the scene when he was with Arizona, did some good things when he was with Jacksonville, or decent things. Never really pushed himself to be that pinnacle number one wide receiver that Arizona and Jacksonville thought he was going to be. So he's been moved on from both those places. You couldn't hand pick a better location for Christian Kirk to find himself in for the rest of his career than right there in Houston. You have these pieces that seem to be falling into place for the Houston Texans, coming off of a season where their Jenga pieces kind of fell all over the place. You have Robert Woods go down. I think it was Robert Woods. He went down, and he's older in age. You go and get Stephon Diggs, who goes down. You have a lot of production from Tank Dell, breaks his leg. I mean, you have all of these situations, and you don't know who's coming back or who's going to be healthy or who's going to be that number 2 wide receiver in Houston. I think Christian Kirk fits that number 2 role very well. He would fit the number 3 role if Diggs comes back and is perfectly healthy, and the Diggs that we know. So you could have a monster offense with Mixon running the ball and CJ Stroud slinging it around, doing his thing. I think Stroud puts receivers in very advantageous positions. He makes his receivers better. And right now, we see that there's some guys that are on that roster who have had really good games, like John Mechie and a lot of other, lower tier receivers, because of CJ Stroud's ability and the Texans' ability to run the ball with Mixon. You get a guy like Christian Kirk in there now, I think it opens up his realm of his play style and what he has been kind of waiting to show in the NFL. I think that was a big move, and it makes a lot of sense for Kirk to be in Houston now. The more interesting fact about this whole Jaguar situation, moving on from Evan Ingram, makes me believe that there's somebody that the Jaguars have fell in love with that is either a wide receiver, a pass catcher, but most likely a tight end. And they sit at 5 in the draft, picking in the draft order. Hypothetically speaking, if they have fallen in love with a Tyler Warren, right, a tight end that Liam Cohen thinks that will be instrumental to his offense, a day one guy just right there, will be making plays and will just probably be their best player. You can select him at 5, sure, whatever, and that, everybody's gonna say, oh, that's so high for a tight end, so high. I mean, Kyle Pitts went 4th to the Falcons, so 5th is not much different for a guy if you value him at that position. But the intriguing part is the Jets don't have a quarterback. And we're assuming that there's going to be, Titans, Browns, Giants, Raiders, Jets. Probably 5 of the first 10 picks are going to be looking at those 3 top quarterbacks in Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jackson Dart. If, for whatever reason, if Cam Ward and Shedeur go within the first 3 picks and Jackson Dart's available or Shedur's available, and you're sitting there at the 5th pick, and one of those, or Ward, right? If Cam Ward's available, if one of those guys is available, the Jets are going to need to get ahead of the Raiders. And the Raiders are at 6. Jets are at 7. Jags are at 5. So if you love Tyler Warren, the Raiders aren't taking him. They got 2 standout tight ends. Trading back to 7 so the Jets can come up and get a quarterback, and then you select Tyler Warren at 7 would make the most amount of sense. You get value. You replace an area of need that you just released from. I think there's some underlying things that are happening here with the Jags. And if you're somebody that's trying to do mock drafts and try to figure out these things, like all these analysts that you see on TV, it's not magic. It's not because they have a phone that gives them all the answers or that they can call every GM. And, you hear all these analysts. Yeah, I talked to 4 GMs this week about this guy. They didn't talk to anybody. They're watching the same information, getting the same news, getting the same everything that you are. They're talking to an insider at that building who has overheard a conversation or who had a brush conversation with the GM. It's very rare for analysts to be calling general managers, multiple general managers every week about information on their draft board, because even if they did, the general manager is not leaking information to these people. So understanding that they get these picks right, and there's a lot of understanding from mock drafts based on the idea that they watch the film, they understand who the players are, they understand fits for the teams, they start thinking like the general managers, and they start to look at analytics and trends, but they also start to understand what is being written on the wall, the writing on the walls, these receivers being moved in and out, trades happening, value that they're placing on certain positions. You can see it kind of formulate itself. Right now, the Jags are kind of formulating that plan that I think is going to get very evident and very loud towards the draft. And they hold a very good position. They hold the Raiders' fate in their hand, because if they make a trade, they are crushing the Raiders with the trade. If they don't, they're allowing the Raiders to make their pick in my hypothetical make-believe situation that one of these three quarterbacks will be available at 5 for either the Raiders or the Jaguars to come up, which would then make your negotiating terms very, very friendly for the Jaguars to the Raiders, and may even get you more value for you to just to swap, to block the Jets from getting what they want. Very interesting. This is why the draft is so intriguing, and that's why free agency is so important to pay attention to. So that's a Jaguar situation. Obviously, coincidentally, speaking of the Raiders and everything going on, Davante Adams was released this week from the Jets. No surprise there. He was kind of brought in because of Aaron Rodgers, and now he's kind of being let go because of Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers to Vegas makes, I think, the most sense. If I'm Aaron Rodgers and I want to keep playing and they're going to make me an offer, that's probably where I'm going to find myself. Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Tom Brady, Las Vegas. You can't beat Las Vegas. Just everything about it. You just can't beat it. We're not even going to go into Las Vegas, but we could sit here and talk hours on Las Vegas. But I think it's a great place to play. I think Rodgers would succeed there. I think it would help them bring in a young guy that may be in that 3rd, 4th, 5th round range, or a guy like a Justin Fields or somebody else that could really learn from a mentorship of not only Pete Carroll, not only Chip Kelly, but Aaron Rodgers. You have Tom Brady in the building. There's a lot of good that happens right now in that building if Aaron Rodgers goes. The relationship with Davante Adams being fixed and him going back there, that would be something that I'm very intrigued to see. And I don't think that it's completely out of the picture. Last guy, and before we get into the defensive ends, George Kittle got a 5-year, $75 million deal with the San Francisco 49ers, which also makes me believe that Ayuk, back to that conversation, will be out the door as well. Congratulations to him. That is awesome. That is an incredible contract. It's incredible money, life-changing money. He'll be set, him and his family, for life. He's still doing it at a high level. He's a competitive guy, and he's really good for the tight end position. He's really good for that offense. I'm excited to see guys get paid. I love watching guys get paid, and it's not a deal that necessarily is going to break their team in half as far as this cap type of issues that they have going on. They're going to keep moving forward and making cap moves and changing the structure of what they have going on there. So congratulations to George Kittle. If you're a 49ers fan, that's a huge addition. If you're a George Kittle fan, you're jumping with joy. If you're a fan of any other tight end that needs to get paid, this is a very good thing, especially if that tight end is good. Obviously Kelsey and his deals need to get worked out, and there's a lot of things that have to happen for the tight end position, but I think the tight end position is in a good spot. But let's get into the trenches. Let's get into the game wreckers. Let's get into these edge players, these guys that are – I'm going to start with this. Let's just start with this idea, this topic of conversation here. This draft class for defensive linemen, edge players in particular, is as deep as we've ever seen it, maybe even deeper than we've ever seen it. This might be one of the most historic defensive line classes in at least my memory from recent years. Let's just say recent years, maybe past 10 years. I have between 6 and 7, 6 for sure. I'm trying to think back of the names. 7 potential first round grades on defensive end edge players. There's 7 guys right now that are top tier edge players in the NFL that are need new deals or free agents. So we talk about this idea of risk versus reward. Which one are you going to be? What is your team going to do? Are they going to risk versus reward on young players in the draft, hoping that they can come in and, replace or even be better than the guys that you have there? Or are you going to go risk versus reward that you pay a guy that's a known commodity to have proven himself in this league for how many ever years he's been doing it, or for maybe even one season, and bank on the fact that he's going to continue that for the rest of his career with your team? I mean, he could go off the edge of a cliff and have 0 sacks for the next 4 years, and you just paid him like he's the highest paid player. So, I mean, you can pass on paying your guys, go draft a guy who never sees the field. The guy that you sent out of your building could go sign a record deal and break records and become a Hall of Fame player. So it's a gamble. It's like playing slot machines. It's like playing cards. It's being a general manager and making these decisions, especially on key cornerstone players, is an absolute gamble. It's one of the riskiest things that general managers will have to do. You have more forgiveness in the draft. I would say that if a draft prospect doesn't work out versus not paying somebody, them going somewhere and being historic. Saquon Barkley is an example of that. The Giants thought that they could land any free agent that they wanted at running back or go and draft a running back that will replace Saquon. They did neither of those things. Saquon goes to the Eagles, has a historic run, wins a Super Bowl, and the Giants are looking like absolute idiots. Not saying it's going to be like that forever. That's just an example of what could happen. And it's something to be mindful of as fans of these teams when things start to happen. And I know that you Giants fans out there, I know that you're mindful of that. I know that you were mindful of that when you watched it unfold on Hard Knocks. But the positions I want to talk about, first and foremost, Max Crosby, $106.5 million over 3 years, $91.5 million guaranteed. Incredible. And what he's overcome in his life and the things that he's been through and the triumphs that he's had to make to get into the NFL and to be this player. He plays the game the right way. He is everything you want in a defensive end, in an edge player, in a defensive player. Plays every snap, whether he's hurt or not. He gives it his all, his 100% effort, and he's recruiting guys now that he got paid, like Aaron Rodgers, to come and play for his team. He's a team guy. Obviously, the deal is not very team friendly, but he wanted his accolades, and I think he deserved it. But that leaves some question marks. Anytime a guy gets paid, and now Max Crosby is the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, more than any other player that has ever played in the NFL at any position other than the quarterback. Max Crosby is the highest paid player. Incredible. Which means now that the next guys on this list that we're about to name are going to be looking at Max Crosby like, we want that or more. And these names probably, in a lot of people's mind, should generate that amount or more. We have Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Josh Sweat. Now, Joey Bosa was released from the Chargers, and Khalil Mack is still waiting a deal or free agency, a deal from another team. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 guys that are on a list that believe that they should be paid a significant amount of money. Now, I'm not saying Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, or even another technical difficulty. I don't know what's going on today. Taking a week off has definitely messed everything up. But as I said, I'm not saying that Josh Sweat, Joey Bosa anymore, or Khalil Mack anymore is worth the $106 million mark. But there's a core belief that TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, maybe even Trey Hendrickson, and definitely Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett and TJ Watt for sure are up in that $100 million range. So what's going to happen? You have 7 guys. I think there's a consensus idea that Myles Garrett and TJ Watt are worth that $100 million. I think some people would throw Micah Parsons into that. I think some people believe Trey Hendrickson will be somewhere a little lower than that, but in that tier range. I think Josh Sweat will get paid as a very good edge rusher, not one of the best. I know that he had a overall good productive year. He was also on a very, very good team. And then Bosa and Mack are interesting. I think Bosa will find his way into a relatively normal sized deal. Will probably end up somewhere where we expect, probably San Francisco or somewhere where, you know, his services are needed. And Khalil Mack will probably get paid to continue to do what he does on a team that has a lot of cap space and just needs somebody to come in and kind of help secure that defensive line. But if there's 7 guys with first round grades and you have 7 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 teams really, because the Chargers get rid of both of their guys. The gamble is drafting a guy with first-round talent to replace a guy who is a known commodity in the league. I think it's going to be very hard to replace Myles Garrett. I think it's going to be really hard to replace Watt. I think it's hard to replace a Micah Parsons. Might not be as hard to replace a Bosa or a Mack, especially where they're at in their career. Maybe not even a Josh Sweat. Or a Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson's situation is very intriguing because Sam Hubbard, his running mate on the other side, announced his retirement, which congratulations to him on a fantastic career. Ohio, born and raised, went to Ohio State, played for his favorite team, Cincinnati Bengals. Last play of his career, he scores a touchdown from Joe Burrow, gets to catch a pass, which is awesome. I think that's what these storylines and these NFL trends need to be all about. A true guy that just left his heart on the field for the team that he loved, for the city and the state that he grew up, being a fan of and living in. But it opens the door for the Trey Hendrickson situation. Obviously, Hubbard retiring frees up a little bit of money. If you don't pay Higgins, it frees up more money. I don't know what the overall situation is going to be there. I haven't really dug into it, but I think there's an interesting conversation for the draft risk versus reward versus paying these guys in the risk versus reward. For me this year, if I'm looking at any of these guys that are not named Myles Garrett or TJ Watt, I'm probably looking towards the draft. So if you're a team, if you're the Chargers, you're looking to the draft. I think the Cowboys, they paid Oso Odigizua, the defensive tackle, gave him a massive deal, which might be leaning towards the idea that Parsons is not getting the mega deal that he thinks. Hendrickson probably will be traded out of there, I'm assuming, because the Bengals will probably look to the draft. I think the Eagles, they draft very well, so they're confident in their skills and their ability to bring in pass rushers. They have a lot of good pass rushers there already. So I'd be interested to see what these deals become. I think Garrett, his deal is either going to get figured out or he's going to be traded, and he's going to be traded for a very large value. I think TJ Watt gets paid. I don't think he's leaving Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh lets him walk out of that door. I think he gets paid. I think he gets paid what he wants. I don't think he gets paid more than Max Crosby. The only reason I say that is because TJ Watt seems that when it's life-changing money, whatever that dollar amount is, he signs. He pushes agents out of the way, as we heard on the Pat McAfee show many times. Signs the deal because he wants to play ball, and he loves playing ball. So I don't think he's going to hold out, sit around for $107 million. I think they'll probably pay him in that 90s, maybe even 100 even. He'll sign his deal and call it a day. But the risk versus reward is insane. 7 just edge players with first-round grades. I have 4 I think maybe even 5 interior defensive linemen with first round grades, which just right there alone, you would assume that these teams will have an opportunity at one of those players that they really like. It's easier, it's cheaper, and it allows you to at least be competitive in free agency, maybe pay some other pieces, or have to reap what you sowed by paying other pieces, especially in Dallas. You pay Osa, you pay Dak Prescott, you pay CeeDee Lamb. This inevitable kind of train of the Micah Parsons, we're going to pay you the record deal that everybody thought he was going to get, is kind of running out. If they can make it work, that'd be fantastic. But I don't see that happening at this moment. I think there will be more tags this year than we've seen. Probably a lot of deals done that shock a lot of people. I think a lot of these guys, when they're presented these deals, even though it doesn't make them the highest paid at their position, it will be life-changing money and money that they cannot turn down. And I know I wouldn't. Keeps you employed, gives you a job. That's the most important thing in this league. The longer you play, the more money you make. The longer you have a job, the better off you are. So with that being said, we need to figure out our technical difficulties. We need to kind of get back on track, get back on the scheduled routine. Shorts will be posted throughout the weekend. We'll be back on Monday with another video recapping whatever happens over this weekend. I'm sure it's going to be electric leading into free agency. Free agency kicks off this coming up week, which I'm so excited to talk about. I'm working on another mock draft post-combine. If anybody sees this and maybe saw the last one, if you're curious, I'm thinking about just doing round 1. If you guys are interested in more than round 1, let me know. I do work on a full 7 round at one time, but releasing only round 1 is kind of the trajectory that I'm probably going to follow unless I hear otherwise. But with that being said, for everybody at Chalk Talk, the Deal With It Productions, the whole family, cast, and crew, we can't thank you guys enough for tuning in, watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, do the whole 9 yards. It helps us more than you would ever understand. And we are excited. 2 weeks away, March 23rd, the show is going on the road. We are taking this to a whole new trajectory of wild, fun entertainment. And it's not just going to be me. So stay tuned for that. I'll continue to drop information. So for everybody here at Chalk Talk, I'm Preston Deal. We will see you on Monday. Peace.